The halls of Ridgeview Academy gleamed with pristine marble, sunlight cascading through tall windows like golden ribbons. It was a kind of school where kids wore designer backpacks and had personal drivers waiting for them after class. Money whispered from the cufflinks of their fathers and shimmered in the diamonds around their mothers' necks. In a place like this, status wasn't just a thing. It was everything. Amara Evans walked those halls quietly, almost like a shadow. Her sneakers were clean but worn. Her braids were neatly done, but her uniform was a little faded at the seams. Most people didn't even remember her name. She was just the janitor's daughter. The girl whose father, Mr. Evans, scrubbed the gym floors and emptied their trash bins after school. Students passed her in the hallway and pulled their bags closer like her presence might stain them. She didn't speak much, not because she couldn't, but because she knew most of them only saw her as one thing, invisible or inconvenient. Mr. Evans had worked at Ridgeview for nearly 20 years. He was a tall, proud man with a back that carried more weight than anyone knew. He wore his navy blue uniform like armor, humming softly as he mopped the halls, eyes kind but tired. Every day, without fail, he brought his daughter with him. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to keep her close. But there was something about Amara no one could quite place. She moved with grace, not the kind you learn in school, but the kind that's bred into you. Her eyes scanned the world with an intensity that made people uneasy. And though she spoke little, when she did, it was with a calm certainty that didn't fit the image they had of someone beneath them. The bullying wasn't always obvious, not at first. Ridgeview kids were too polished for that. It started with whispers when she walked past, or sudden silence when she entered a room. Then came the name-calling, always veiled in sarcasm. "Hey, mop girl," one of the CNAs, Lexi Harding, would say loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you bring your dad's keys to clean up after us?" Amara never responded. Not once. That made them try harder. One afternoon, as she sat under the big oak tree by the edge of campus, reading a worn copy of The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, a group of students walked by. Bryce Langston, the quarterback with a father on the board of trustees, stopped. He looked down at her, amusement playing on his face. "You reading that for fun?" he smirked. "Thought janitor's kids only needed to know how to clean toilets." Amara closed the book slowly, marked a page, and stood. Her gaze locked on his, and for a split second, he hesitated. There was something in her expression, like she was looking through him, not at him. "Better to read Morrison than to end up a footnote in someone else's story," she said quietly, and walked away. The others laughed, but uneasily. Bryce clenched his jaw. Later that week, someone smashed her locker mirror. A note was taped to it. "You don't belong here." Amara said nothing. She simply pulled the shards out, one by one, and threw them in the trash. But inside, something twisted. What no one knew was that Ridgeview had been her father's dream, not Hayes. He wanted her to see how the other half lived, to understand how the world worked at its most ruthless. He believed knowledge was armor, and being underestimated was a gift. "You keep your head down now," he told her every morning as they arrived early. "One day they'll look up and see a crown." But Amara was growing tired of waiting, tired of hiding. Every evening, after the school emptied, she and her father would head to the back lot. There, in a beat-up old sedan, they'd drive an hour outside of town. Not to some run-down apartment, as everyone assumed, but to a sprawling estate hidden deep in the woods. Gates opened automatically. Lights illuminated a long, curved driveway. At the center stood a mansion with columns like a courthouse and windows that stretched 2 stories high. It was her grandfather's home. Richard Ellison, the elusive tech billionaire no one at Ridgeview even knew was still alive, had built his empire in silence. He raised his only daughter, Amara's mother, in privacy. After her tragic death in a car accident 10 years ago, he disappeared from the public eye. But what the world didn't know was that he had one granddaughter, and she was being raised not as a princess, but as a warrior. Mr. Evans had made a vow to raise Amara grounded, to shield her from the arrogance wealth often bred. She would earn her place in the world not because of a name or a bank account, but because she had grit, intellect, and strength. The estate was their sanctuary. There, she trained in debate and strategy with private tutors. She studied business under the guidance of her grandfather, learned languages from a former ambassador, and martial art from a retired soldier who lived on the grounds. She was preparing for a life far beyond Ridgeview. But for now, she was playing the long game. Still, the days at school were wearing her down. One Friday morning, everything changed. As she entered the school foyer, her eyes caught a group of students huddled around Lexi, laughing. Something about the way they looked up and paused told her she was a target again. She knew it before she even opened her locker. Inside was a mop head, soaked and dripping. Red paint was smeared across her books like blood, and in the center was a printed photo, her father mopping floors with a caption, "Daddy's Little Maid." The laughter behind her cut like razors. For the first time, her hands trembled. That night, at the estate, her grandfather noticed. He said nothing as she sat quietly at the dinner table, picking at her food. But after dessert, he placed a small wooden box in front of her. She opened it slowly, revealing a sleek silver keycard and a folded document. "It's time," he said softly. "Let them see what you've built." Amara looked up, fire dancing behind her eyes. "They want to play games," she said. "Let's show them the rules." Monday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. Birds chirped over Ridgeview Academy's ivy-covered walls, and the air smelled like spring and status. Students rolled up in their luxury SUVs and sports cars, tossing designer backpacks over their shoulders as they strutted through the school gates like royalty. No one noticed the sleek black car parked at the far end of the lot. No one paid attention to the driver in the tailored black suit, or the girl in the back seat watching quietly behind tinted glass. Amara sat poised, her braid wrapped into a high bun, her school uniform replaced with a fitted navy blazer and crisp white shirt. Her shoes, one scuffed, now gleamed with soft Italian leather. Her eyes, always observant, now held a calm authority. She wasn't angry. Anger was for amateurs. She was ready. The driver opened her door, and as she stepped out, a few heads turned. Not in recognition, yet, but there was something different about her, something people couldn't quite place. The way she walked, the way she carried herself, like she owned the place. Inside the school, it didn't take long for whispers to start. Amara had never walked through the front entrance before. She usually slipped in through the back with her father long before classes started. But this time, she waited until the halls were full. She wanted them to see her. Lexi Harding saw her first and nearly choked on her ice latte. "Wait, is that her?" she hissed to her group, eyes wide. "Where did she get those shoes?" someone muttered. "Did she steal them?" Amara walked past without a word, but her eyes met Lexi's with a calm, piercing glance. Lexi's smug smirk faltered just a little. In her first class, the teacher paused mid-roll call. "Amara Evans," he said, glancing up. "You look different today." "I just figured it was time to stop pretending I didn't belong here," she replied, her voice smooth, even. Some of the students turned their heads, exchanging looks. After class, the murmurs followed her like smoke. Did she win the lottery? Is she dating someone rich? No way that's the janitor's kid. But Amara didn't speak. Not yet. Let them speculate. Let them twist themselves into knots trying to figure her out. She had something better than answers. She had timing. By lunch, her transformation had become the only thing anyone could talk about. She didn't sit outside under the oak tree this time. Instead, she walked straight into the main cafeteria, territory she'd never dared enter, and took a seat alone at one of the center tables. The room quieted just enough to feel the shift. Lexi strutted over, trying to mask her curiosity with disdain. Did someone donate those clothes, or did her dad find them in the lost and found? She asked with a plastic smile. Amara looked up slowly. Her gaze was steady and unflinching. "Do you always mistake confidence for wealth?" she asked. "Because that would explain a lot." Lexi blinked, thrown for a moment, but then she recovered, scoffing loudly as she turned to leave. Still, the damage had been done. A few students actually chuckled, and some just stared. But the real shock came after school. Students poured into the auditorium for an unannounced assembly. No one knew why. But when the principal stepped onto the stage, flanked by two men in suits and a tall, imposing older gentleman with silver hair, everyone quieted. Students, the principal said. "We have a special announcement from one of our most distinguished alumni, Mr. Richard Ellison." Heads turned. Whispers buzzed. That name meant money. Old money. The kind that built skyscrapers and funded universities. Mr. Ellison took the MIC, his voice deep and composed. "I've watched this institution for many years," he began, "and I've watched it change. Some of those changes have been good. Others, less so. The students shifted, uncomfortable. There's a young woman among you," he continued, eyes scanning the crowd, "who has endured far more than anyone should. You treated her like she was less, because her father worked for a living, because you didn't flash her wealth or beg for your approval." A pause, a ripple of tension. "But what you didn't know is that she's not only my granddaughter, she's also the sole heir to my company and estate." Gasps broke the silence like cracks in glass. Students turned in their seats. Eyes widened. Mouths fell open. "She's been here among you this entire time," Ellison said. "Learning, observing, and now she's ready to take her place." He turned slightly. Amara stood in the back of the room, spine straight, expression unreadable. As she walked toward the stage, the silence deepened. Every step echoed like a drumbeat in cathedral. No one laughed. No one whispered now. She climbed the steps and took the microphone from her grandfather with steady hands. Her voice was calm, but there was a sharpness to it now, still wrapped in silk. "Some of you thought I didn't matter," she began. "Because I was quiet. Because I came to school in an old car. Because I'm black. Because my father is a janitor." She let that word hang in the air. "But while you were busy laughing behind my back, I was learning who you are. Not the faces you show to teachers or parents, but who you really are when no one's watching. And what I've seen isn't pretty." A flicker of movement in the crowd, Lexi looking down at her shoes. "My father taught me that humility is strength, that people's opinions don't define your worth, and that someday the world would see who I really am." Her gaze swept the room. "Well, now you know." She handed the MIC back to her grandfather and stepped off the stage. Students parted like waves as she walked. No one dared stop her. After the assembly, the school felt like a different planet. People looked at her like they were seeing her for the first time, but Amara knew better. They weren't seeing her. They were seeing money, power, legacy. Only a few looked ashamed. That evening, as she sat on the balcony of her grandfather's estate, she sipped tea and stared out at the sunset. Her father joined her, folding his tall frame into the chair beside her. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked softly. She didn't look away from the horizon. "I'm not finished yet." "Good," he said with a small smile, "because the real work's just beginning." She nodded. She had more than money. She had a mission, and Ridgeview hadn't seen the last of her. The next morning at Ridgeview Academy, the air felt different. Charged. Heavy. Whispers trailed down every hallway like ghosts clinging to the walls. Students who once strutted with inherited arrogance now walked with uncertain steps, their eyes darting toward every corner, every shadow, as if Amara Evans might appear from it. And when she did, no one spoke, not even to mock her. She walked the halls with her head high, shoulders back, each step measured and silent. It wasn't revenge she was after. It was clarity. She wasn't hiding anymore. But Ridgeview had never been kind to those who disturbed its hierarchy. Beneath the marble floors and perfectly landscaped lawns ran a current of cruelty, quiet, refined, and razor-sharp. It began small. A whisper here, a glance there. Teachers who used to ignore her now overcompensated with smiles and excessive praise, their eyes filled with awkward fear. Classmates who never bothered learning her name now tried to sit beside her, offer compliments, or drop comments like, "We always knew there was something special about you." But Amara remembered everything. Every laugh, every slur, every time someone called her Mop Girl and pretended it was a joke. The worst were those who said nothing at all. People like Bryce Langston, who avoided eye contact completely. Or Lexi Harding, who had turned pale the moment Amara stepped onto that stage and now refused to speak during lunch. But silence didn't mean surrender. One rainy afternoon, Amara arrived at her locker and noticed something strange. Her books were gone. Every last one. In their place sat a small card, hand-cut from construction paper, with bold red letters. Money can't buy respect. She didn't flinch. Instead, she closed the locker slowly and walked away, her face unreadable. She knew this wasn't over. Later that day, while heading to the library, she overheard whispers behind the auditorium. Voices low, tense. Can't believe she's pulling this crap now. She's got everyone fooled, like she didn't grow up scrubbing floors. She's just another charity case who got lucky. Amara turned the corner and saw them, 3 girls she recognized from Lex's clique. They froze mid-conversation. For a beat, no one moved. Then Amara smiled slightly. Lucky, she said, stepping closer, is surviving in a place like this long enough to expose it for what it is. The girls looked down. No response. None was needed. But the bullying escalated. One morning, her chair in chemistry class was smeared with something sticky and foul. No one claimed responsibility. In gym class, someone accidentally tripped her. A video of her fall went viral within minutes, edited with mocking music and captions. Yet, Amara never flinched, never showed weakness, and that scared them more than anything. That week, a Ridgeview gossip page, anonymous, of course, began posting half-truths and twisted lies. Claims that Amara was faking her wealth, that she wasn't really Alyssa's heir, that she was manipulating everyone. She's a fraud. One post read, her dad still cleaning bathrooms. Wake up, Ridgeview. Her father saw the post before she did. I can have this taken down, he said, his face tight with fury. But Amara shook her head. Let them talk. You don't deserve this. No, she said softly, but I'm not here because it's easy. I'm here because I'm not like them. She knew where the attacks were coming from. Lexi Harding had disappeared from the spotlight, but her reach still infected the school's social bloodstream like poison. She may have lost the stage, but she hadn't given up the game. What Lexi hadn't realized was that Amara wasn't playing the old game anymore. She was rewriting the rules. Instead of responding with retaliation, Amara began to build something. Quietly, carefully. During lunch, she started tutoring 2 freshmen who were being quietly ostracized for not wearing designer clothes. On Wednesdays, she stayed after school to help Coach Daniel, the only teacher who'd ever treated her and her father with kindness, organize supplies for the athletic drive. And every Friday, she met with the principal to propose improvements to Ridgeview's mentorship program. Some students sneered. Others took notice. And slowly, something shifted. The same kids who used to mock her now watched her with wary respect. They weren't ready to admit it, but the power dynamic had shifted, and they felt it in their bones. Still, Lexi wasn't finished. One Thursday morning, a fire alarm rang through the building, unscheduled. Chaos erupted. Students poured into the rain-soaked courtyard. Teachers scrambled to check rosters. Amid the confusion, Amara's locker was broken into. Her notebooks were stolen, torn apart, and dumped into the fountain outside the administration office. She stood in the rain, watching her papers float like broken wings. For a moment, the mask cracked. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes burned. She went home that night and didn't speak for hours. But her grandfather was waiting. People like Lexi, he said, sitting by the fire with a chessboard before him. They build themselves on top of others. But the higher they climb, the further they fall. Amara didn't answer. He moved a pawn forward and looked up. Your move. She sat down and studied the board. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she picked up a knight and placed it with deliberate precision. Time to take the queen, she whispered. The next day, she arrived early, before the students, before the faculty. She walked the halls with purpose, her steps echoing off the lockers. By the time the first bell rang, her plan was already in motion. She'd submitted a proposal to the school board 2 weeks earlier, under her legal name, Amara Evans. The proposal outlined an anonymous scholarship fund for underprivileged students, named in honor of her mother. It had already been approved. She posted the announcement on the school's digital board herself. The moment it lit up across campus, gasps filled the hallways. The I honor Alyssa's scholarship for the unseen, the underdogs, and the unbreakable. Fully funded for 20 students. Every year. Forever. The application was open to all Ridgeview students who came from working-class families. No strings, no interviews, no judgment. The message was loud and clear. She hadn't come for revenge. She came to open doors and burn the ones that were locked. Lexi Harding's face paled when she saw the screen. She knew this wasn't just power. This was legacy. And no matter how many rumors she spread or pranks she pulled, she couldn't touch that. For the first time, Lexi was the one on the outside. And Amara? She was just getting started. Ridgeview Academy had crowned queens before, but none had reigned quite like Lexi Harding. She didn't wear a tiara. She didn't need to. Her throne was built on fear, her influence inherited, sharpened, and ruthlessly wielded. For years, Lexi had been untouchable, but every throne has its cracks, and Amara had found them all. Lexi watched the school unravel around her from behind fake smiles and oversized sunglasses. Her once loyal clique had started to fray, peeling away like old paint. People who once hung on her every word now murmured behind her back, drawn to the steady flame of something new, something real. That something was Amara, and Lexi hated her for it. She couldn't stop thinking about that moment on stage. The moment Amara had revealed her identity, declared it. The girl she used to call Mop Girl now had the entire school wrapped around her finger. Even the teachers were nervous around her. That scholarship announcement had been the final blow. Lexi had laughed it off. "She's trying way too hard," she told her followers. "It's desperate." But the smirk never reached her eyes. Amara, meanwhile, remained calm, composed, and unshakable. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to prove anything. That silence, that confidence, it was driving Lexi insane. She started trying harder, louder, throwing lavish parties, flaunting her wealth, and posting carefully curated Instagram stories that screamed luxury. She strutted through the halls like nothing had changed. But everyone knew. They were witnessing a shift. The queen bee was still buzzing, but her hive had begun to collapse. Then came the invitation. A golden envelope tucked into Lexi's locker. "You are cordially invited to the Amara Evans Foundation Gala. Saturday, 7 p.m. Formal attire. Bring your best mask." Lexi stared at it, fingers trembling. She'd heard rumors. Everyone had. The Amara Foundation was exclusive, old-money elite, attended by senators, CEOs, and billionaires. And now Amara was hosting it. Lexi didn't hesitate. She had to go. Saturday night arrived like a storm. Limos lined the cobblestone driveway of the Amara estate, their headlights slicing through the dark like blades. Guests in glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos stepped out beneath a chandelier of stars. Inside, the ballroom glowed with soft gold lighting and string music. Crystals shimmered. Champagne flowed. And at the center of it all stood Amara. She wore a floor-length black gown that hugged her frame with elegance and quiet power. A thin diamond bracelet shimmered at her wrist. Her hair was pulled back in a regal knot, her expression unreadable beneath a black lace mask. The moment Lexi entered the ballroom, eyes followed her. She wore a red silk dress that demanded attention, bold, radiant, and desperate. She spotted Amara across the room, standing beside her grandfather in a circle of people too rich to care about high school drama. Lexi hesitated, but then strutted forward with the confidence of someone who still thought she had a crown. "Nice party," she said with a smirk. "Did your dad mop the floors before we got here?" Amara turned slowly, eyes locked onto Lexi. The music swelled in the background, soft violins like whispers in the dark. "No," Amara said calmly, "but I'm sure he'd have done a better job than your attitude does at cleaning up your reputation." Lexi's smile faltered. "This isn't you," she snapped. "You're not one of them. You're just pretending." Amara's gaze sharpened, like ice slicing through silk. "I was never pretending, Lexi," she said. "I just didn't think I needed to prove anything. But you showed me otherwise." "I made you," Lexi hissed. "No one even knew your name before me." Amara stepped closer, her voice lower, deadlier. "And now they know yours for all the wrong reasons." As Lexi opened her mouth to retort, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Lexi Harding?" asked a tall man in a gray suit, holding a small velvet folder. She turned. "I'm with the Ridgeview Board of Trustees. I'd like a moment." Lexi blinked. Why? He opened the folder. We've received multiple reports about your behavior on campus, cyberbullying, targeted harassment, and an authorized use of school systems. There will be a formal investigation. You'll be contacted Monday. Lexi went pale. I didn't. Amara said nothing. She didn't have to. The music continued. Laughter returned. And Lexi stood there, frozen in the middle of the ballroom, suddenly irrelevant. Later that night, Amara stepped out onto the estate balcony, the cold night air brushing against her arms. Her father joined her, silent for a while before speaking. She came, didn't she? She did. And she fell, Amara said softly. He nodded. You feel better? Amara was quiet. No, just clearer. She'll come after you again. I know. Then what's next? She turned to him. Next, I rebuild. Not just my name. This school. This whole system. It's broken. He smiled. You always did think bigger than the rest. Inside the ballroom, the guests danced and mingled, unaware of the quiet revolution that had just unfolded on the marble floors beneath their feet. Amara didn't need to fight with words anymore. Her power had become undeniable. Her silence, her calm, her vision, it had spoken louder than any insult Lexi had ever thrown. Ridgeview's queen bee had fallen, and in her place stood something far stronger than royalty. A legacy. Spring arrived at Ridgeview Academy with a strange quietness, the kind that comes not from silence, but from change. The flowers were blooming early that year, and the halls were no longer echoing with cruel laughter or whispered insults. Something had shifted. Something had cracked. At the center of it all stood Amara Evans. Gone were the stares filled with mockery or pity. Now, the eyes that followed her were wide with something else, respect, admiration, fear, even, not because she was powerful, but because she had become undeniable. She hadn't burned Ridgeview down. She had remade it. The scholarship she launched had already received over 50 applications, and Amara read each one. At night, she sat beside her father with a stack of essays in her lap, her grandfather's words still lingering in her mind. Legacy isn't what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you build while you're still here. And Amara had built something. She'd started the Voices Unheard initiative at Ridgeview, an anonymous forum and support program that allowed students from low-income or marginalized backgrounds to speak, report, and connect. She arranged mentorships between Ridgeview students and local community leaders, artists, entrepreneurs, engineers, and educators who didn't come from privilege but from perseverance. Every week, she hosted roundtable talks, inviting teachers and students alike to confront the school's history, its quiet bigotry, its favoritism, the invisible lines that separated students by wealth, race, and social capital. Not everyone supported it. There were whispers, resistance, but the whispers no longer grew teeth. Because Amara had learned that the loudest voice in the room wasn't always the one that echoed, it was the one that endured. Lexi Harding never returned to Ridgeview. After the investigation, her family quietly transferred her to a private prep school in another state. No apology, no goodbye, just silence, like the end of a chapter no one wanted to read again. But the damage Lexi had done remained, in old bruises, in erased identities, in people who still walked Ridgeview's halls quietly, cautiously. Amara didn't forget them. She became their voice. At the senior award ceremony, the auditorium was packed. Teachers, parents, students, alumni. It was the most attended event in Ridgeview's history. Amara took the stage once more, but this time, not with a hidden truth to reveal. This time, she was the honored guest. The principal, his voice shaking slightly, introduced her. Tonight, we recognize Amara Evans, not only as a valedictorian of this year's graduating class, but as a visionary behind the transformation of Ridgeview Academy. Her academic excellence, leadership, and unshakable character have forever changed this institution. Her story is now a part of our story. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. Amara stood behind the podium, looking out over the sea of faces. She wore a simple white dress, her natural curls crowned by a thin gold headband. Her father sat in the front row, dressed in his best suit, pride glistening in his eyes. Her grandfather sat beside him, quietly beaming. She didn't speak right away. When she did, her voice was steady, clear. Some of you remember me as the janitor's daughter. Some of you laughed when I passed you in the halls, or whispered my name like it was a joke. And some of you never even saw me at all. But I saw you. I saw what this place could be, not because of its wealth or history, but because of its people, because of the quiet strength in those who had to fight twice as hard to be heard. I stand here today not because I'm rich, but because I remembered who I was even when others tried to erase me. She paused. I was taught to believe I didn't belong, that being black, being from a working-class family, meant I was less. But what I've learned is this: our power isn't in how others see us. It's in how we see ourselves. She looked directly at the students sitting in the back, the ones who rarely raised their hands in class, who kept their heads down. This is your school, too. Your voice matters. And if they try to silence you, speak louder. The crowd rose again, thunderous, and that's when the scream behind her flickered to life. It displayed a bronze statue already installed in the campus garden, a young girl holding him up in one hand and a book in the other, standing tall. The plaque beneath it read, "To those who are invisible, we see you now." Gasps filled the auditorium. Some teachers wiped their eyes. Amara had immortalized not herself, but the struggle, the resilience, the quiet stories of kids who'd never been invited to the front of the room. After the ceremony, students and parents gathered around her. A young boy, freshman, thin and nervous, stepped forward. "I just wanted to say, thank you. I didn't think someone like me could belong here." Amara knelt slightly to his level. "You do. You always did." As the crowd thinned, her father walked up beside her. He'd changed back into his maintenance uniform. "You sure you want to leave this all behind?" he asked. Amara smiled, eyes following the sun setting over the Ridgeview lawn. "I'm not leaving it," she said. "I'm taking it with me." In a few months, she'd be heading to an Ivy League university on full academic scholarship. But more than that, she'd continue her work with the Amara Evans Foundation, expanding the scholarship and advocacy programs across the country. Her story was just beginning. She walked the Ridgeview halls one last time the next morning. She passed the janitor's closet where she used to hide, the gym where she was shoved, the lockers once scratched with cruelty. And she touched the edges of it all, not with bitterness, but with power. This was a battlefield, and she had won. Outside, the statue gleamed in the sun. Students gathered around it, snapping photos, leaving flowers, and reading the inscription aloud. The girl they once called Mop Girl had become a legend, not because she was rich, but because she never stopped being real.